The throne room of the Velaryon Empire was the most beautiful place Commander Ethan Vance had ever seen. Crystal pillars rose from the floor like frozen waterfalls. The ceiling was made of living light that shifted and danced in colors humans had no names for. Thousands of alien dignitaries filled the massive hall, their bodies wrapped in glowing silks and armor made from materials that Earth scientists could only dream about. Ethan stood alone near the center of the room. He was the only human in a sea of aliens. Some had 4 arms, some had wings, some floated without any legs at all. They all looked at him with curiosity, confusion, or contempt. He was used to it by now. 3 years ago, Ethan had been just another soldier, a sergeant's son from a small town in Ohio who had joined the military because he did not know what else to do with his life. He was not special. He was not important. He was just a man who knew how to follow orders and fire a rifle. Then the siege of Nexus Prime happened. Nexus Prime was a fortress world belonging to the Velaryon Empire. It was supposed to be untouchable. It had the best defenses in the galaxy. It had fleets of warships protecting it. It had millions of soldiers ready to fight. None of that mattered when the Hollow Swarm came. The Swarm was a nightmare given form. Billions of creatures that moved like locusts and thought like a single mind. They did not negotiate. They did not stop. They consumed everything in their path and moved on to the next world. When they hit Nexus Prime, the defenses crumbled in hours. The great Velaryon fleets were scattered. The soldiers ran. Everyone ran. Everyone except Ethan. He had been on the planet as part of a small human support team. When the evacuation began, he was supposed to leave with the others. But then he saw the children. 200,000 civilians were trapped in a sector that the swarm was about to overrun. The evacuation ships could not reach them in time. The Velaryon soldiers assigned to protect them had already fled. Ethan did not flee. He found a defensive position at a narrow bridge. It was the only path the swarm could use to reach the civilians. And he held it. For 6 hours, alone. His rifle ran out of ammunition. He picked up fallen weapons from dead soldiers. Those ran out too. He used grenades. Then knives. Then his bare hands. The swarm kept coming, wave after wave, and Ethan kept fighting. He did not know why. He did not think about it. He just knew that behind him were children who could not fight for themselves, and in front of him were monsters that wanted to kill them. So he stood, and he fought. And he refused to die. When the rescue ships finally arrived, they found Ethan standing in a mountain of swarm corpses. His armor was destroyed. His body was broken. He had 17 wounds that should have killed him, but he was still standing, and behind him, 200,000 civilians were still alive, including the youngest son of the Velaryon Emperor. The Emperor was not a sentimental creature. He had ruled his empire for 3,000 years. He had seen countless battles, countless heroes, countless sacrifices. Very little impressed him anymore. Ethan impressed him. In a ceremony watched by trillions across the galaxy, the Emperor did something that had not been done in 10,000 years. He gave a non-Velaryon the crown of Valdris. The crown was a circlet made of living starlight. It marked the wearer as a prince of the empire. It gave them status equal to the Emperor's own children. It was the highest honor any being could receive. Ethan hated it. He was not a prince. He was not royalty. He was a soldier who had done his job. The crown felt wrong on his head. The fancy clothes they made him wear felt like a costume. The political games he was forced to play made him sick. But Earth needed allies. Humanity was new to the galactic stage. They were weak compared to the ancient empires. They needed friends. And the Velaryon Empire was the most powerful friend they could have. So Ethan wore the crown. He attended the parties. He smiled at aliens who looked down on him. He bit his tongue when they insulted his species. He did it for Earth. He did it for humanity. He did it because that was his duty now. Tonight was the Galactic Concord Summit. Leaders from 100 species had gathered to discuss trade, territory, and the ongoing threat of the Hollow Swarm. Ethan was there as Earth's representative. He stood near a pillar, trying to stay invisible. It never worked. The crown on his head glowed softly. drawing eyes wherever he went. Aliens whispered as he passed, some with respect, most with resentment. Who was this human to wear the crown of Valdris? Who was this primitive creature to stand among the elite of the galaxy? Ethan ignored them. He had learned to ignore many things. Then Princess Seraphis arrived. She entered the throne room like a storm made flesh. 4 arms, compound eyes that glittered like diamonds, kitten skin that glowed with inner light. She was 32 cycles old, which meant she was barely an adult by Valerian standards. But she was the heir to the Empire. The future Empress. The most important person in the room besides her father. And she was looking directly at Ethan. The princess moved through the crowd, and aliens parted before her like water. She stopped in front of Ethan, and studied him with open curiosity. Her translator clicked and whistled, turning her alien speech into smooth human words. "So," she said, "you are the human who wears my family's crown." Ethan bowed his head slightly. "Your Highness, I have heard stories about you, Commander Vance." Her tone was sweet, but something sharp hid beneath the sweetness. The hero of Nexus Prime, the man who would not run. She tilted her head. "Tell me, do all humans share your stubbornness? Or are you simply too stupid to know? When you are beaten," the aliens nearby fell silent. They watched with hungry eyes, waiting to see how the human would respond. Ethan kept his face calm. "We prefer to call it determination, Your Highness." Seraphis laughed. It was not a kind laugh. "Determination," she repeated. "How charming. How very human." She began to circle him slowly, like a predator examining prey. "I have studied your species, Commander. Fascinating creatures, really. You live such short lives. What is it, 80 years? 90? We Valarians live for thousands of years. Some of the elder races live for millions." She stopped in front of him again. "And yet you humans rush around as if you matter, as if your tiny lives have meaning." Ethan said nothing. His hands stayed at his sides. His expression did not change. "Your civilization is barely a century old," Seraphis continued. "You have colonized, what, a dozen worlds? We have colonized 600. Your technology is primitive. Your culture is crude. You still fight wars among yourselves like animals." She leaned closer. "And yet here you stand, wearing a crown that took my ancestors 10,000 years to earn." The silence in the room was absolute. Every alien was watching now. Ambassador Chen, Earth's diplomatic representative, caught Ethan's eye from across the room. She made a small gesture. "Stay calm. Do not cause an incident. Think of Earth." Ethan thought of Earth. He thought of his father, who had worked himself to death in a factory so Ethan could have a better life. He thought of his squad, the men and women who had died on Nexus Prime while he survived. He thought of every human who had ever been told they were not good enough, not smart enough, not important enough. Princess Seraphis smiled at his silence. She took it for submission. "Tell me, Commander," she said, her voice dripping with contempt. "Do humans still measure their worth by how efficiently they kill each other? Or have you graduated to killing other species now?" Something shifted in Ethan's eyes. Ambassador Chen saw it. Her face went pale. The old emperor, watching from his throne, leaned forward with sudden interest. And Ethan Vance, the hero of Nexus Prime, made a decision that would change the galaxy forever. The silence in the throne room was heavy. It pressed down on everyone like a physical weight. 1,000 aliens held their breath, waiting to see what the human would do. Princess Seraphis stood before Ethan with a victorious smile on her face. She had insulted him. She had insulted his entire species. And he had said nothing. In her mind, this proved everything she believed about humans. They were weak. They were inferior. They knew their place. She was wrong. Ethan looked at the princess for a long moment. He studied her glowing skin, her compound eyes, her 4 arms crossed with arrogance. She was beautiful by Valarian standards. She was powerful. She was royalty. And she understood nothing. "Your Highness," Ethan said quietly. May I speak freely? Seraphis waved one of her hands dismissively. Of course. Speak, human. Amuse us with your primitive thoughts. Several aliens in the crowd laughed softly. Ambassador Chen closed her eyes in despair. She knew that tone in Ethan's voice. She had heard it once before, on Nexus Prime, right before he did something impossibly stupid and impossibly brave. Ethan nodded slowly. Thank you, Your Highness. I appreciate your generosity. He took a step forward, not aggressive, not threatening, just present. The princess did not step back, but something flickered in her eyes. Uncertainty, perhaps, or curiosity. I have read the histories of your empire, Ethan began. His voice was calm and steady. The Valarian Empire is 11,000 years old. In that time, you have colonized 600 worlds. You have mastered faster-than-light travel. You have built ships that can cross the galaxy in days. You have cured every disease. You have conquered death itself. He paused. It is magnificent. Truly. I mean that with complete sincerity. Seraphis relaxed slightly. This was more like it. The human was acknowledging Valarian superiority. Perhaps he was not as stupid as she thought. Humanity, Ethan continued, has been a spacefaring species for exactly 83 years. We have colonized 12 worlds. Our fastest ships take months to cross distances your vessels cover in hours. We still get sick. We still grow old. We still die. He looked around the room at the assembled aliens. Ancient species. Powerful species. Species that had been traveling the stars when humans were still living in caves. By every measure that matters in this galaxy, we are nothing. We are children playing in the shadow of giants. We have no right to stand in this room. We have no right to speak to beings who have existed for millennia. Ethan's voice remained quiet, but something in it had changed. Something hard. Something unbreakable. And yet, here I am. The laughter had stopped. The aliens were listening now. Really listening. 3 years ago, Ethan said, the Hollow Swarm attacked Nexus Prime, a Valarian fortress world, protected by Valarian fleets, defended by Valarian soldiers. He looked directly at Seraphis. When the swarm came, those soldiers ran. They had better weapons than me, better armor, better training, thousands of years of military tradition, and they ran. Seraphis's glow dimmed slightly. Her 4 hands uncrossed and fell to her sides. I did not run. Ethan's voice was not boastful. It was simply stating a fact. I stood on a bridge with a rifle that was running out of ammunition. Behind me were 200,000 civilians. Children. Families. People who could not fight for themselves. In front of me was an enemy that had destroyed civilizations older than my entire species. He took another step forward. Seraphis still did not move back, but her eyes were wide now. I did not stand there because humans are better warriors. We are not. Your soldiers are stronger, faster, and better equipped than any human could ever be. Ethan shook his head slowly. I stood there because someone had to. I stood there because those children did not speak my language, did not know my name, did not care that I was human. They were just scared, and I could not walk away from scared children. The throne room was absolutely silent. Even the emperor had stopped moving on his throne. That is what humans are, Your Highness. Ethan's voice was soft but carried to every corner of the vast chamber. We are not the strongest species. We are not the smartest. We are not the oldest, or the wisest, or the most advanced. But we are the species that runs toward the fire. He reached up and touched the crown of Valdris on his head. The living starlight pulsed gently beneath his fingers. We are the idiots who look at a burning building and think, someone might be trapped inside. We are the fools who adopt predators as pets and teach them to love us. We are the madmen who look at the empty void between stars and think, I wonder what is out there. Ethan lifted the crown from his head. The starlight dimmed immediately. The warmth faded. Without contact with a living being, the crown of Valdris was just a circle of metal and light. Beautiful, but empty. You asked if humans measure our worth by how efficiently we kill. Ethan set the crown down on a nearby table. The sound it made was soft, but in the silence, it echoed like thunder. We do not. We measure our worth by how hard we fight for things that matter, by how far we will go for people we love, by what we are willing to sacrifice for strangers we will never meet. And the Centum, he looked at Seraphis one final time. There was no anger in his eyes, no hatred, just a deep, tired sadness. Your Highness, you have lived for 32 cycles. By your standards, you are barely an adult. You have your whole life ahead of you, thousands of years to learn and grow and change. Ethan's voice was gentle now, almost kind. I hope someday you understand that worth is not measured in years or technology or conquered worlds. Worth is measured in what you do when everything falls apart. He turned and began walking toward the exit. The crowd parted before him automatically. No one spoke, no one moved to stop him. They just watched in stunned silence as the human walked away from the highest honor their civilization could bestow. Commander Vance! The Emperor's voice rang out across the throne room. It was deep and ancient and filled with power. It was a voice that had commanded armies, shaped empires, decided the fates of billions. Ethan stopped. He did not turn around. You would insult my daughter? The Emperor demanded. You would abandon the crown I gave you? You would throw away everything your species has gained? Ethan stood very still. His back was straight. His shoulders were steady. When he spoke, his voice carried clearly through the silent chamber. With respect, Your Majesty, your daughter insulted every human who has ever bled for this conquered. She mocked every soldier who died, holding lines they could have fled. She dismissed every sacrifice my people have made to prove we belong among the stars. He finally turned his head, just enough to look back over his shoulder. I did not throw anything away. I simply refused to pretend that was acceptable anymore. Ambassador Chen had her face in her hands. Her career was over. Human-Valarian relations were destroyed. Everything they had worked for was crumbling. But she could not help feeling something else beneath the despair. Something that felt almost like pride. Ethan continued walking. The great doors of the throne room loomed before him. They were 50 feet tall and made of living crystal. They had stood for 10,000 years. They had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations. Now they witnessed a single human walking through them with his head held high. Behind him, the throne room erupted into chaos. Aliens shouted at each other in 100 different languages. Diplomats rushed back and forth. The Emperor was speaking rapidly with his advisors. Princess Seraphis stood frozen where Ethan had left her, staring at the crown on the table. She reached out and touched it. The starlight did not respond to her. It remained dim and cold. The crown recognized only the one who had earned it, and that person had just walked away. For the first time in her 32 years of life, Princess Seraphis Valarian did not know what to think. Everything she had believed about humans, about worth, about power, and status, and meaning, it was all suddenly uncertain. She picked up the crown and held it in her 4 hands. It was lighter than she expected. And somehow, that made it feel heavier than anything she had ever held. In the corridor outside, Ethan Vance walked alone toward an uncertain future. He had no idea what would happen next. He might be arrested. He might be executed. He might have just started a war. But for the first time in 3 years, the weight on his shoulders felt lighter. He had told the truth. He had stood for something. He had refused to bow. Whatever came next, he could live with that. 48 hours had passed since Ethan walked out of the throne room. He was now aboard the HSS Perseverance, a small human destroyer that was limping its way back toward Earth space. The ship was old. Its engines made strange noises. Its hull had patches from dozens of repairs. It was not impressive by any galactic standard, but it was human. And right now, that was enough. Ethan sat alone in his small quarters. The room was barely big enough for a bed and a desk. The walls were plain metal. There were no decorations, no comforts, no signs of luxury. It felt like home. He stared out the small viewport at the stars passing by. Each one was a sun. Each sun might have planets. Each planet might have life. The galaxy was so vast, so full of wonders, and humanity had only scratched its surface. Would they ever get the chance to explore it now? Ambassador Chen had arranged his quiet extraction from the Valerian homeworld. She had not yelled at him. She had not lectured him. She had simply looked at him with tired eyes and said 4 words, "You have set us back." Ethan knew she was right. Years of careful diplomacy. Years of building trust. Years of proving that humanity could play by galactic rules. All of it. Damaged by one moment of pride. But was it pride? Or was it something else? He thought about the princess and her mocking words. He thought about the aliens who laughed. He thought about every time he had smiled and nodded while beings older than human civilization treated him like a trained pet. No, it was not pride. It was truth. A soft chime interrupted his thoughts. Someone was requesting communication on his personal channel. Ethan frowned. Very few people had access to that channel. And none of them should be contacting him right now. He pressed the accept button. The voice that came through was strange. It had the clicks and whistles of an alien language, smoothed by a translator into understandable words. But it was not Valarian. The accent was different. The rhythm was wrong. Commander Ethan Vance. The voice was calm and measured. I represent the Concord's outer territories. We wish to speak with you. Ethan sat up straighter. The outer territories were the edges of galactic civilization. The forgotten colonies. The species too young or too weak to matter in imperial politics. They had no power, no influence, no voice. I am listening, he said carefully. Your words in the throne room have spread, Commander. Every servant who stood in that hall has told others. Every minor diplomat has reported to their governments. Every species that has ever been dismissed by the core empires has heard what you said. Ethan shook his head slowly. I just made a scene. That is all I did. No, Commander. You did much more than that. The voice carried something Ethan had not expected. Hope, raw and desperate hope. You removed a symbol of power that was freely given to you. You declared that your worth did not depend on their approval. You walked away from everything they offered because their respect was conditional. The voice paused. Do you understand what that means to those of us who have spent centuries being told we are lesser? Ethan was silent. He had not thought about it that way. For 1,000 years, the core empires have decided who matters and who does not. They give honors to those who please them. They crush those who defy them. They have built a system where worth is determined by the powerful, not earned by the worthy. The voice grew stronger, and then a human, a member of the youngest spacefaring species in the galaxy, stood before them and said no. He said that worth is not given, it is proven. He said that the approval of the mighty is not required for the humble to have value. Ethan felt something strange in his chest. It was not pride exactly. It was more like recognition. Like hearing his own thoughts spoken back to him by a stranger. Commander. There is a reason humanity frightens the elder races. It is not your weapons. Your weapons are primitive. It is not your wars. Many species fight among themselves. It is not your short lives or your reckless courage or your strange habit of befriending dangerous animals. Then what is it? Ethan asked. It is that you do not know your place. The voice was almost admiring. Every species in the galaxy learns its position. The weak bow to the strong. The young defer to the old. The small accept their insignificance. This is how things have always been. This is how the elder races maintain order. A pause. Humans refuse to learn this lesson. You see a line drawn in the sand, and you step over it. You see a door closed to you, and you knock it down. You see a mountain too tall to climb, and you start climbing anyway. The voice carried a note of wonder. And the most terrifying thing is that your refusal is contagious. Other species see you defy the order of things. They see you survive. They see you succeed. And they begin to wonder, what if we could do the same? Ethan did not know what to say. He had never thought of humanity this way. To him, humans were just people doing their best in a galaxy that did not want them. But to the forgotten species of the outer territories, humans were something else entirely. They were proof that the rules could be broken. Before Ethan could respond, alarms exploded across the ship. Red lights flashed. Sirens wailed. The calm voice of the ship's computer cut through the chaos. Alert! Alert! Unknown vessels emerging from fold space. Contact count: 47. Repeat: 47 hostile contacts detected. Ethan was on his feet instantly. His military training took over. He was already moving toward the door when the alien voice spoke again through his communicator. Commander Vance, the Hollow Swarm has found you. Ethan froze. They know what you represent now. They have been watching. They understand that you have become a symbol of something dangerous to the order they wish to impose on the galaxy. The ship shuddered as the first enemy weapons found their target. They mean to destroy that symbol, Commander. They mean to prove that defiance leads only to death. Ethan gripped the doorframe as the ship rocked again. They are going to kill you, the voice said. They are going to kill everyone on that ship. And they are going to broadcast it to every corner of the galaxy as a warning. Another explosion. Closer this time. Ethan could hear crew members shouting in the corridors. Then we will have to disappoint them, he said. He cut the communication and ran toward the bridge. The corridors of the Perseverance were chaos. Crew members rushed to battle stations. Damage control teams grabbed equipment and sprinted toward the outer hull. Officers shouted orders that were barely heard over the alarms. Ethan pushed through them all until he reached the bridge. Captain Maya Yuen stood at the center of the command deck. She was a small woman with gray streaks in her black hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. She had commanded the Perseverance for 15 years. She knew every sound the old ship made, every weakness in its armor, every trick that kept it flying when newer ships would have broken apart. She looked at Ethan as he entered. 47 swarm cruisers, she said calmly. Nearest Allied reinforcement is 6 hours away. Our weapons are outdated. Our shields are at 70%. Our engines are barely holding together. She smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had accepted the impossible. Any suggestions, Commander? Ethan looked at the view screen. It was filled with black shapes emerging from folds in space. Hollow swarm vessels. Biomechanical nightmares that had consumed civilizations. They moved with terrible purpose, surrounding the tiny human ship, 47-1. No escape. No rescue. No hope. Ethan thought about the alien voice. About what it had said. About humanity being a symbol of defiance. If they died here, that symbol would die with them. But if they fought, if they showed the galaxy what humans did when there was no hope. Yes, Ethan said quietly. I have a suggestion. Captain Yuen raised an eyebrow. We make them pay for every inch. The Perseverance was a small ship facing an army of monsters. Captain Yuen looked at the view screen. 47 swarm cruisers surrounded them. Each cruiser was 10 times the size of the Perseverance. Each one carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Together, they could erase a planet from existence, and they had come for one ship, one human, one symbol. All hands, Captain Yuen spoke into the ship-wide communicator. Her voice was steady, calm, almost peaceful. This is the captain speaking. The chaos on the bridge quieted. Every crew member stopped and listened. In approximately 30 minutes, we will all probably be dead. Yuen's words were blunt. Honest. Human. The enemy has us surrounded. We are outgunned, outmanned, and outmatched in every possible way. Standard military doctrine says we should surrender or run. She paused. We are not going to do either of those things. On the view screen, the first swarm cruiser began moving toward them. Its hull was black and twisted, like something grown rather than built. Organic shapes pulsed beneath its surface. It was alive. It was hungry. Somewhere out there, Yuen continued. Every species that has ever been told they do not matter is watching. The weak, the forgotten, the young civilizations like us, who have been dismissed as irrelevant, They are watching to see what happens when the fire comes for humanity. She looked around the bridge at her crew. Young faces, scared faces, brave faces. They need to see what humans do when there is no hope. They need to see that we do not bow. We do not break. We do not go quietly into the dark. She straightened her uniform. So we are going to fight. We are going to make these monsters pay for every second they spend trying to kill us. And when the history books are written, they will say that the crew of the Perseverance faced impossible odds and chose to stand anyway. She smiled grimly. Battle stations, give them hell. The bridge erupted into controlled chaos. Officers shouted coordinates. Weapons systems came online. The old ship groaned as its engines pushed to maximum power. Ethan took his position at the tactical station. He was not technically part of the crew, but no one questioned him. In moments like this, rank and protocol meant nothing. Only survival mattered. First wave incoming, the sensor officer called out. 12 cruisers, attack formation. Evasive pattern Delta, UN ordered. Conserve ammunition. Make every shot count. The Perseverance danced. There was no other word for it. The old ship moved in ways that should have been impossible. It slipped between enemy fire. It twisted through gaps in the swarm formation. It used the enemy's own ships as shields against their allies. Captain UN had spent 15 years learning every trick to keep her ship alive. Now she used them all. The first swarm cruiser exploded under concentrated fire from the Perseverance's main batteries. A cheer went up from the crew. One down, Ethan said. 46 to go. Then we better work faster, UN replied. The battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The swarm was used to victory. They were used to enemies who ran or surrendered or died quickly. They were not used to a single ship that refused to stop fighting. Every time they surrounded the Perseverance, it slipped away. Every time they thought they had a killing shot, the ship moved at the last second. Every time they sent boarding parties, they were met with humans who fought like cornered animals. Ethan led a team to repel boarders on Deck 7. The swarm creatures were nightmares made flesh. They had too many limbs, too many teeth. They moved with the coordination of a hive mind. They should have overwhelmed the humans in seconds. They did not. Ethan fought with a rifle until it ran out of ammunition. Then he fought with a pistol. Then a knife. Then his fists. Around him, his team did the same. They screamed. They bled. They refused to fall. Fall back to Junction 9, Ethan ordered. His team retreated in good order, dragging their wounded with them. Behind them, the corridor was filled with swarm bodies. How many did we lose? Ethan asked. 3. A young soldier replied. His face was covered in alien blood. His hands were shaking, but his voice was steady. Torres, Kim, and Washington. 3 more names, 3 more humans who would never go home. Ethan nodded. They bought us time. Make it count. On the bridge, things were getting desperate. Half the weapons were offline. Shields were failing. Fires burned in 3 sections of the ship. The casualty reports were growing longer by the minute, but they were still fighting. Main batteries are dry, the weapons officer reported. We have nothing left. Captain UN stared at the view screen. 17 swarm cruisers had been destroyed. 11 more were crippled and drifting. It was an impossible number. A single old ship had done more damage than entire fleets, but it was not enough. 19 cruisers remained, and the Perseverance had nothing left to give. Captain, the sensor officer's voice was strange. I am detecting new contacts. More swarm? No, ma'am. He looked up with wide eyes. Valarian signatures. A full battle fleet. Led by the Emperor's flagship. Led by the Emperor's flagship. UN felt her heart stop. On the view screen, space tore open. Ships poured through. Hundreds of them. Valarian warships in perfect formation. Their weapons already firing. The remaining swarm cruisers tried to flee. They did not get far. In 3 minutes, it was over. The Perseverance drifted in a field of debris. Its hull was torn open in a dozen places. Its engines were dead. Its lights flickered weakly, but its flag still flew. A communication came through. The face of Emperor Valdris appeared on the view screen. He was ancient even by Valarian standards. His compound eyes had seen the rise and fall of civilizations. Very little surprised him anymore. Today, he was surprised. "Captain Yuan," he said slowly. "We came as quickly as we could. We did not expect to find you still alive." Yuan laughed weakly. Blood ran down her face from a cut on her forehead. "Neither did we, Your Majesty. 17 cruisers destroyed, 11 crippled, by one ship." The Emperor's voice carried something strange. Something almost like fear. "How?" Yuan looked around at her broken bridge. At her wounded crew. At the bodies of friends who had given everything. "We are human," she said simply. "This is what we do." The Emperor was silent for a long moment. Princess Seraphis stood beside her father. She had watched the battle. She had seen the tiny human ship refuse to die. She had watched humans fight with bare hands against creatures that had destroyed civilizations. She finally understood. This was what her mocking words had dismissed. This was what she had called primitive and crude. This stubborn, insane, beautiful refusal to accept defeat. "Father," she whispered. "What are they?" The Emperor watched as rescue ships approached the shattered Perseverance. Watched as humans pulled their wounded from the wreckage. Watched as they immediately began planning repairs on a ship that should have been abandoned. "They are the future," he said quietly. "And we almost made them our enemy." Ein. On the broken bridge of the Perseverance, Ethan sat against a wall. His left arm was gone, lost to a swarm creature on deck 7. Medics were stabilizing him for transport, but he was smiling. They had survived. They had shown the galaxy what humanity could do. And somewhere out there, in the forgotten corners of civilization, the weak and the dismissed and the forgotten were watching. They were learning. They were beginning to hope. Ethan woke up in a room made of light. For a moment, he thought he was dead. The walls glowed softly with colors that shifted and danced. The air smelled like flowers he had no name for. Everything was warm and peaceful and perfect. Then the pain hit him. His left arm was gone. He remembered that now. The swarm creature. The fight on deck 7. The feeling of something being torn away from him. He looked down. Where his arm had been, there was now smooth skin. No wound. No scar. Just nothing. The regeneration process is complete. Ethan turned his head. A Valarian medical officer stood nearby, checking displays that floated in the air like living things. "Your arm will regrow within 3 days," the officer said. His voice was professional, but not unkind. "Valarian medicine is quite advanced. You will experience no permanent damage." Ethan stared at the place where his arm would regrow. Humans could not do this. Human medicine could give him a mechanical replacement at best, but the Valarians could regrow flesh and bone like it was nothing. And yet, when the swarm came, it was humans who had held the line. "Where am I?" Ethan asked. "The Emperor's flagship." The medical officer paused. "You are a guest of honor, Commander Vance. Guest of honor." Ethan almost laughed. 2 days ago, he had walked out on the Emperor's daughter and abandoned the crown he had been given. Now, he was a guest of honor. The galaxy made no sense. The door to the medical bay opened. Emperor Valdris entered. He was alone. No guards, no advisors, no servants. Just an ancient being who had ruled an empire for 3,000 years, visiting a wounded human soldier. Ethan tried to sit up. The Emperor raised a hand. "Rest, Commander. You have earned it." Ethan settled back against the bed. The Emperor moved closer and sat in a chair that seemed to grow from the floor itself. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "I have lived for a very long time," the Emperor finally said. "I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched species evolve from animals to gods. I have witnessed wonders that your kind cannot imagine." He looked at Ethan with ancient eyes. "I thought I understood the galaxy. I thought I knew how things worked. The strong rule. The weak serve. The young learn from the old. This is the natural order. This is how it has always been. He shook his head slowly. Then humanity arrived. Ethan said nothing. He just listened. At first, we did not take you seriously. You were so young. So primitive. Your ships were slow. Your weapons were crude. Your lifespans were tragically short. We thought you would be like every other young species. You would learn your place. You would accept your position at the bottom of the hierarchy. End of the hierarchy. The Emperor's voice carried something like wonder. You did not. He leaned forward. On Nexus Prime, you held a line that our own soldiers abandoned. In my throne room, you rejected an honor that species have fought wars to receive. In the battle against the swarm, you fought when surrender was the logical choice. He paused. My daughter asked me what humans are. I told her you are the future. I was wrong. Ethan frowned slightly. Wrong? You are not the future, Commander. You are a mirror. The Emperor's voice was soft. You reflect back to us everything we have forgotten. The courage we lost when we became comfortable. The defiance we abandoned when we became powerful. The fire that died when we started measuring worth by years instead of deeds. He stood slowly. The Outer Territories have formally requested that humanity lead a new coalition. Species that have never had a voice are demanding seats at tables they were never invited to. The order that has governed the galaxy for 10,000 years is shaking. Ethan felt his heart beating faster. I did not mean to start a revolution. No. You never do. The Emperor almost smiled. That is what makes you terrifying. The door opened again. Princess Seraphis entered. She looked different. Her posture was less arrogant. Her eyes were less certain. She carried something in her 4 hands, holding it like it was precious and fragile. The crown of Valdris. She approached Ethan's bed slowly. The Emperor stepped aside to give her room. For a long moment, she just looked at him. The human who had refused her mockery. The soldier who had walked away from power. The man who had helped hold an impossible line while his arm was torn from his body. Commander Vance. Her voice was quiet, stripped of all the arrogance that had colored it before. I have spent the last 2 days reading reports. Reports from Nexus Prime. Reports from the battle with the swarm. Reports from humans who served with you. She paused. I read about soldiers who carried wounded friends for miles while being hunted. I read about pilots who crashed their ships into enemy vessels to save others. I read about medics who treated patients while bleeding out themselves. Her compound eyes glistened. I read about a species that has been in space for less than a century and has already earned more honor than civilizations 1,000 times older. She held out the crown. I spoke from ignorance. I judged from arrogance. I dismissed your entire species based on numbers and years and technology. Her voice cracked slightly. I was wrong. I am sorry. The word hung in the air. Valarian royalty did not apologize. It was simply not done. Until now. Ethan looked at the crown in her hands. The living starlight glowed warmly, responding to his presence even from a distance. Then he shook his head. Keep it, Your Highness. Seraphis blinked in confusion. But it is yours. I know. Ethan smiled gently. But I do not need it. I never did. He reached out with his remaining hand and gently pushed the crown back toward her. Give it to the next species that does something impossible. Give it to some young soldier from a forgotten world who holds a line they should have fled. Give it to anyone who proves that worth is not about age or power or technology. He met her eyes. Let the crown of Valdris become a symbol, not of Valarian approval, but of galactic recognition. A reminder that any species, no matter how young or weak or small, can earn the respect of the stars. Seraphis held the crown against her chest. Tears ran from her compound eyes. You are a strange species, Commander Vance. We know. Ethan grinned. We consider it a feature, not a flaw. The Emperor stepped forward. His ancient face carried something new. Respect, perhaps, or maybe something deeper. What will you do now, Commander? You could stay here. Advise the coalition. Shape the future of the galaxy. Ethan looked toward a viewport. The stars burned in the endless dark. So many worlds. So many species. So much left to discover. I am going to go home, he said. I am going to let my arm grow back. I am going to attend the funerals of the friends I lost. He turned back to the Emperor. And then I am going to find the next fire that needs someone to run toward it. The Emperor nodded slowly. That is the most human answer you could have given. Thank you, Your Majesty. 3 weeks later, Ethan stood on Earth. The sky was blue. The grass was green. The wind carried the smell of rain and growing things. It was not as grand as the crystal halls of the Valarian Empire. It was not as vast as the star fields of deep space, but it was home. Behind him, a monument was being built. A memorial to the crew of the Perseverance. To the humans who had fought against impossible odds and shown the galaxy what their species could do. The inscription would be simple. They ran toward the fire. Ethan touched the memorial stone with his regrown hand. The fingers worked perfectly now. Valarian medicine was truly remarkable, but the scars inside would take longer to heal. Commander Vance? He turned. A young officer stood at attention. She was barely 20 years old, fresh out of the academy. Her eyes were bright with the same fire that Ethan had seen in so many human eyes. Message from the Outer Territories, sir. There is a situation on a colony world called Threshold. Local population under threat. They are asking for help. Ethan looked at the sky. The stars were invisible in the daylight, but he knew they were there. Billions of them. Waiting. What kind of threat? Unknown, sir. But they specifically requested you. Ethan smiled. The fire never stopped burning. There was always someone who needed help. Always a line that needed holding. Always a reason to keep fighting. And humanity would always answer the call. Tell them I am on my way. The end.